What do these famous people have in common? Each of them started their successful careers as an intern. In 1963, Steven Spielberg was getting coffee on the set of Universal Studios. A year later, fashion designer Betsy Johnson landed a summer internship at a magazine in New York City. In 1968, Hillary Clinton was an intern for President Gerald Ford when he was a congressman. And in the same year, Steve Jobs was a summer intern when he was in high school with Hewlett-Packard building computers. In 1973, Oprah Winfrey was an intern at CBS in Nashville. In the 80s, Anderson Cooper was an intern for 2 summers at the Central Intelligence Agency. And Aziz Ansari was an intern when he started in comedy in the 2000s. Internships can be a successful and excellent launching pad for any career. I graduated with a political science degree in 2010. The global economy was suffering from the financial crisis, and the job markets at the time were very competitive. How was I going to get my foot in the door? I needed an internship. I drew on my connections and I landed a 6-month internship at an embassy in Washington, D.C. This is a hub for global politics. It was perfect. When I arrived in D.C., the city was swarming with interns working for think tanks, nonprofits, law firms, Congress, and the White House. We went to happy hours, we gossiped about the headlines of the day, and we learned about the inner workings of every institution. It was a mecca for a policy intern. I was learning a ton and having a blast. But it didn't take long before I noticed something very suspicious. Almost every intern I spoke to was, like me, from privileged circumstances. These were the children of lawyers, investment bankers, academics, judges, politicians. They came from elite schools, and they were not afraid to draw on their connections. I finished my internship in DC with a beautiful few lines on my CV, some connections, and some reference letters. I talked about this internship in my law school applications, and I was accepted. Here's the problem. Unpaid internships are killing diversity. They exclude those who cannot afford to do them, and they exclude those who do not have the connections to get one. For fair opportunities, internships need to offer fair pay. Since the financial crisis, unpaid internships have become prevalent in a wide variety of fields. Let me tell you about some of the most shocking unpaid internship advertisements that I've read about lately. 1, a pro sports team in the US has advertised for an unpaid intern to edit promotional videos, keep players' stats, and drive the team around. Although this job involves extensive travel, the job advertisement did not include a single travel expense. 2, a top fashion house in London is advertising for a, quote, talented knitwear student to knit fashion garments for the runway. There's zero compensation apart from £3 a day for lunch, which is not enough to even buy a sandwich in central London. 3, a private jet company is advertising for an unpaid intern to essentially run their entire business. The advertisement included a long list of tasks, including things like drafting PR and marketing reports, developing business strategies, and supporting the CEO. 4, a global 5-star hotel chain is advertising for unpaid interns to do dishwashing, laundry, bussing tables, and making beds. And 5, a global nonprofit is advertising for unpaid interns to assist in their efforts of tackling human rights issues and global inequality. This is in the world's most expensive cities, such as Zurich, New York, Brussels, and London. These positions are being offered not just to provide experience to the intern, but for the employer's benefit. These advertisers are exploiting the precarious position of young people while simultaneously excluding those who cannot afford to do them. When internships are only offered to the privileged few, the sectors that shape our society, such as politics, entertainment, the arts, and nonprofits, will suffer. When employers advertise unpaid internships such as these, they might be excluding the next Steven Spielberg, Steve Jobs, or Oprah Winfrey. This issue goes beyond corporate social responsibility. It's an issue of talent acquisition. Unpaid internships disproportionately impact female-dominated industries. And as a result, women from disadvantaged backgrounds face an additional challenge, and this further widens the gender pay gap. Time for some good news. The interns are fighting back. We are the people who have benefited most from this system. Still, we see that this system is flawed and we want it to change. I'm talking about David Hyde, the former United Nations intern who slept in a tent in Geneva to make a point about the thousands of unpaid interns working at the United Nations. The irony is that this is supposed to be the global focal point for tackling diversity and inequality. I'm talking about the former interns from Fox Searchlight, media company Condé Nast, and NBC Studios, who have won lawsuits against those companies for the wages that they deserve. And I'm talking about the interns around the world who are taking to the streets and the web in protest and are fighting to change the laws in their own countries. Change is already here. The European Parliament has banned unpaid internships. Just this year, the United States Senate allocated $5 million towards paid internship positions. Canada's federal government has invested in 10,000 paid internships across the country. Companies around the world are converting their unpaid positions into paid positions. Still, some companies are lagging behind, as are some political organizations. The United Nations is one of them. So there's still more work to be done. Internships should be a great equalizer. They provide an opportunity to make connections and for anyone to be able to break into a new field. Do not forget, the interns of today are the CEOs, political leaders, and cultural influencers of tomorrow. What steps will you take? Will you ensure that your organization no longer employs unpaid interns? Will you put a stop to unpaid internships in your industry? I will leave you with a Noam Chomsky quote that I think perfectly captures the sense of duty I feel as someone who has unfairly benefited from an unpaid internship. Responsibility, I believe, accrues through privilege. You and me have an unbelievable amount of privilege, and therefore, we have a huge amount of responsibility. Thank you.